Doomed planet.
Yo, I'm an alien, I'm going to invade. You better quit your jobs and you won't get paid.
Our planet is doomed, but humanity is not. In a few billion years, the sun will explode and destroy Earth. Luckily, we've got guys like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk working on plans to colonize Mars and to create giant rotating human storage facilities in space. So human life, in the unlikely event that it does continue for a few billion more years, is theoretically not doomed. I am your host, Alex, keeping it positive. Welcome. This week's feature, how Generoso Pope Jr. used mafia connections to build a tabloid empire. But first, podcasts. They changed my life. I've been working at a job doing tasks that are easily done while listening to podcasts. And from that concept, listening to podcasts all day long, I have made new friends, done a deep dive into Seattle politics, become active on socialist Twitter, and generally sopped up an incredible amount of valuable information. My history is this. The first podcast I ever listened to was Intercepted with Jeremy Scahill. That is some damn reality-based news and views about politics and the general fuckery of neoliberal capitalism. Some honest shit. Democracy Now!, of course, in podcast form, on demand. You know, Amy Goodman's weird Canadian accent can be a bit grating, like when she says the words plan and ban, and she says those words frequently. Scahill's career was spawned from this show, as he has acknowledged. And they have great people on, like Noam Chomsky. That's someone who's pretty much banned from mainstream corporate news like the New York Times or NPR. We could talk about podcasts all day long, but for now I want to give some shout-outs to Seattle Sucks. It's a great show where they eviscerate local politicians. Behind the Bastards. That's where they profile the worst people in history, including Hitler and Steven Seagal. Citations Needed, Jacobin Radio, Deconstructed, Chapo Trap House. These shows give me hope. They're mostly staffed by millennials who are not only socialist as fuck, they are super smart, very entertaining, brilliant in their frank assessments of the broken capitalist system we live in right now. Podcasts. You gotta love podcasts. I am someone who has been self-producing media for many decades. Started with photocopying my self-produced comic books when I was a kid, making zines. Shot with Super 8, VHS, mini DV. Did some pirate radio, some public access TV. Made some long-form videos. Published some newspapers. All that kind of loser stuff. But this podcast medium really excites me. It's also low budget as fuck, and that's my style. I've always created stuff that I would want to see and that reflects my interests. That may limit our audience, as it has always limited my audience, which is basically a few friends and some family. But here goes. Tabloid journalism, environmentalism, activism, socialism, marijuana, Seattle history, Seattle true crime. There's a lot of that. Weird movies, beer, the billionaire class, obituaries, cults. Yeah, cults. The Doomed Planet podcast is going to cover those things and more. We're going to do interviews too. This episode we have Max. He is your typical Seattle teenager, and we're going to be talking with him about vaping and Stalin. Okay. Are you ready for some down and dirty sleaze? Are you down and dirty with exploring the dark side of the American business world? which is a dark world indeed. Then let's roll. Generoso Gene Pope Jr. went from rich kid to super rich after his family and their Italian language newspaper empire cut him off, and he bought the New York Enquirer, turned it into a lurid tabloid of smut, then changed the name to the National Enquirer, bribed supermarket executives with prostitutes to get it on the shelves, along with the help from the mafia, and then moved his whole operation down to Florida in order to bust the unions. Along the way, he smoked 3 packs a day, and when he died, the timing was perfect for his heirs, who made millions. This is his story. Most of this episode is a book review. Generoso's son and heir, Paul David Pope, wrote a book called The Deeds of My Fathers, How My Grandfather and Father Built New York and Created the Tabloid World of Today. His father, Gene Generoso Jr., left him millions of dollars, some of which he spent hiring researchers to help him with this book. One unfortunate thing is that he uses the technique of made-up dialogue, creating conversations based on guesswork at best. Another thing, not once in this book is the weekly world news mentioned. It's as if Paul David Pope was ashamed of how silly it is, with the aliens and Bigfoot and stuff, even though the National Enquirer was and still is an embarrassing right-wing piece of shit. Still, it's an amazing story and a good read, especially if you like true crime, mafia, lurid, sensational stories about the dark side of journalism. Good stuff. Generoso Pope Sr., power broker of New York, according to Paul David, immigrated from the poverty-stricken Italian village of Paschiarelli. His mom died in childbirth when he was very young. And then we have the American dream, a voyage to the U.S. in steerage, finding work as a laborer in the sand pits, becoming foreman, taking over the company while screwing over his partner, building an empire that supplied concrete to a New York City that was transitioning from beautiful buildings made of stone to steel-framed concrete brutalism. Colonial Sand and Stone was the company. Big money. Tailored suits. Well-connected. Working in conjunction with the infamous mobster Frank Costello, doing deals. Gene, or Generoso Jr., was 9 years younger than his oldest brother, Fortune. I'm paraphrasing here, but looking at a photo of 3 cute rich kids in suits. And 7 years younger than Anthony. Generoso Sr. considered the 2 older boys to be soft-handed, spoiled wussies, and he doted over Gene. This makes for interesting reading, but we need to get to Gene Jr. Long story short, Gene Sr. buys the Italian language newspaper Il Progresso from a bankrupt Carlo Barsotti in 1928. We learned that in a chapter called Making a Friend of Mussolini. So yes, Il Progresso helped prop up Italian fascism by printing favorable shit about Mussolini in Il Progresso. During a visit to Rome, Gene Sr. gets a medal from Il Duce, the Order of the Star of Italian Solidarity. In 1948, he would be awarded the same medal for outstanding contribution to the reconstruction of Italy after World War II. And then we have some made-up dialogue. "For your service to the fatherland," Mussolini said as he gave Gene Sr. the medal. He dismissed the guards and motioned for Generoso to join him at a table. "Now then, tell me everything about my enemies in America." So Gene Sr. is palling around with New York Mayor Jimmy Walker as the Depression unfolds in 1929. I mean, this guy is, he knows all the rich and powerful people all over the world. He held a fascist parade, one protested at the time by, yes, anti-fascists. Then Germany invades Poland. He stopped supporting FDR and was sad when Wendell Willkie was defeated by FDR. The Italian vote Generoso Sr. helped generate did not help the Republican Wendell Willkie. Generoso had been friends with FDR since his days as governor of New York. I do not think it is true that Pope had fascist tendencies, FDR wrote in a memo after seeing the FBI report on his friend. He merely hunted with the hounds, chiefly as a business proposition. So that would be fascism. There's a joke on the Simpsons TV show where Homer is reading the Springfield Enquirer, and the headline is "Deadbeat Dad Beat Dead." And this kind of reminds me of what happened to Mussolini. He was a deadbeat dad, and he was beat dead. And his body was dragged around in the streets and whatnot, and desecrated. Okay, that should put us in the mood for an ad.
We'll be right back after this message.
For man-sized pleasure, this is the one. Get pleasure, Falstaff size, the most refreshing beer a thirsty man can pour. Yet light enough to leave room for more.
Man-sized pleasure, every premium quality Falstaff you pour. Falstaff always takes extra care to make the finest beer possible, even to cascading every brew over the Falstaff chilling tower, instantly icing down each brew to protect that famous premium quality taste every step of the way, till it's safely capped in and you're ready to enjoy it, satisfying to your man-sized thirst, light enough to leave room for more.
For man-sized pleasure, this is the one. Premium quality Falstaff beer.
So Gene Jr. became friends with Roy Cohn when he was a kid. And Roy brokered a deal for Generoso Sr. to buy a foreign language radio station in New Jersey. Roy arranged the deal, kicking back some of his commission to a FCC commissioner to grease the regulatory skids, according to Paul David. Gene is Gene Sr.'s favorite. They met Harry Truman in 1948 to propose that they interfere in the Italian elections to prevent communism from having a role. Gene becomes editor at Il Progresso. His brothers eventually fuck him over and cut him out of the family business. Later, they are busted for massive fraud, a scheme for Colonial Sand and Stone to overcharge for concrete that lasted for years. Pressure on their family friend and mobster Frank Costello heated up in the 50s. Gene Jr. had 3 wives, Patty, Sandy, and Lois. The mother of the author of this book, Deeds of My Fathers, the book we've been heavily paraphrasing here, was Lois. Gene Jr. buys the failing New York Enquirer with the help of a loan from Frank Costello, brutal mobster. Remember, this guy, he's in a business where disputes are settled by torturing and killing people. You know, bootlegging, I'm all for it. Killing people as part of the business plan, nah. He's not a stupid guy. As Roy Cohn has a connection to our current president, that is sickening, but we'll skip chapter 20, which is Roy Cohn breaks a newsstand boycott. I think I mentioned that the New York Enquirer had gone full tabloid by this time, with headlines like Brooklyn Girl Found Nude, Throat Cut, Passion Pills Fan Rape Wave Here, Devil Worship Sect Holds Rights in New York. Eventually, the New York Enquirer morphs into the National Enquirer, which is a weekly. The offices are moved from New York to New Jersey, and then to Manalapan, Florida. Gene Jr. cited bad weather, crime, and, of course, a truckers' union that was being paid too much. He also, to his credit, wanted to distance himself from the New York Mafia, at least geographically. Like most publishers of degrading, sleazy tabloid newspapers, Gene Jr.'s first wife, Patty, ended up in a mental hospital and then died after an overdose. He was already dating his second wife, Sandy, by that time. Gene was an eccentric person and he started to get weirder. An employee working at the Enquirer said it had been 6 months since he'd seen Gene at the office. Eventually, Gene muscles the Enquirer into every supermarket in the country through a massively expensive campaign of whining and dining politicians and supermarket executives. The author of the book is born in 1967. Enquirer co-founder Frank Costello died at age 82 on February 18, 1973. It was the end of an era, as the cliché goes, and there are many in this book. The Enquirer's circulation would keep climbing and would peak on September 6th, 1977. With the cover story we all know, it sold millions of copies. Elvis, the Untold Story. There's a picture on the cover of Elvis in his coffin. Gene Jr. spent a fortune unleashing a massive team of journalists and detectives to seek out anybody and everybody even remotely associated with Elvis. One of the king's cousins, Bobby Mann, agreed to take a shot of Elvis lying in state for $500. Much like the early demise of Kurt Cobain, death made the parasites rich. Although $500, even back then, is not exactly more than chump change. We're really at the end of the book here. Carol Burnett sued the Enquirer and won. Gene died of a smoking 3 packs a day every day since he was 16 related illness on October 2nd, 1988. His will stipulated that the Enquirer was to be sold, with half of the proceeds going to a trust for Paul David's mother and half divided equally between Paul David, Gene III, and his sisters, Gina, Michelle, and Maria, making them all rich as fuck. Paul David starts buying, quote, fast cars, then faster cars, and generally acting like a nouveau riche asshole, even though third-generation wealth is more like old money, at least in this country. Then he assembled a team of top professionals after working on the book for a year to help him finish it. Some former Enquirer staffers, other people, and that's it. That's the sins of my fathers. There's so much missing in this book. There's so much about Generoso Sr. and so little about the Enquirer, and nothing about the Weekly World News. But, I really don't give a fuck about the Enquirer after the Elvis cover anyway. Coming up to our modern age, in May 2014, American media shifted the headquarters from Florida back to New York. There's a documentary from 2014 directed by Rick Burns called Inquiring Minds, The Untold Story of the Man Behind the National Enquirer. That is probably worth watching. One low point in the Enquirer's recent history was putting child murder victim John Benet Ramsey on the cover, and they have put her on the cover repeatedly over the years. They also engage in the not very journalistic practices of catch and kill. That's where they're paid to find a story and bury it. And they also pay their sources. The content is generally a right-leaning mix of celebrity trash and other tripe that skews to the right. When celebrities are dying of cancer, the Enquirer might have the scoop. That's nice. And they helped prop up piece of shit criminal Donald Trump. And probably helped him become president as a result. So thanks, Enquirer. The most recent Enquirer scoop came in the January 28th, 2019 issue. Bezos' divorce. The cheating photos that ended his marriage. Text sex and wild romps on his private jet. How he stole another mogul's wife. 11 pages of exclusive photos. What really happened? But we'll have to save the details of that for our Bezos Town episode. I love you, alive girl.
1, 2, 3, 4. You know I love you when you talk like that, baby.
Pardon me, baby.
But what's a nice beer like you doing in a can like this? Don't you know bottling or canning beer removes a lot of the taste?
I'm different.
Yeah, that's what they all say. But for real beer taste, give me draft beer. Nobody's figured out a way to bottle that.
We have.
Ertles has? Tell me about it.
Ertles has microfiltration. That's better than the pasteurizing that takes away that good draft beer taste. Here. Non-filling, microfiltered brew. Ertles real draft beer.
Say, you are different. Ertles is real draft beer.
I'm True Brew. For fresh, non-filling draft beer. Which would you rather have?
I'd rather have you, baby.
For this episode of the Doomed Planet podcast, we are interviewing Max.
Hi, I'm Max. I'm a skateboarder. I'm a Marxist-Leninist. And, because I'll be talking on this podcast.
Okay, so the kids these days, I mean, he's not close to being a millennial. I know millennials are all socialists. But Marxist-Leninist, wow, I'm not sure I know what the fuck that means. I will tell you that I would like to vote for Bernie Sanders. I know you claim he's a mere democratic socialist and that that's not good enough.
Well, I do like Bernie Sanders a lot because when somebody who's in mainstream politics is spreading these ideas of class consciousness, it can definitely aid the revolution a lot because more workers can know about their own oppression. But generally, any type of reformism is not something I'm too big on. So, the two-party system.
Reformism as opposed to radical change, where everything is completely changed. Reform is like, well, we'll raise taxes on the rich a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I also want to talk about vaping.
Vaping, yes.
I'll tell you that I've never vaped tobacco. I've tried it with the cannabis, and it's oily. It gives me this lung-clogging feeling.
That's generally the feeling when you...
Wait. Now, you have not tried it. You're just researching.
No.
Okay,
No,
good.
I know.
Because there's a public health crisis right now.
Well, I wouldn't call it a public health crisis. I think the media has done a lot of coverage on it, and it has been blown out of proportion considerably. Now, I understand that vaping is very unhealthy, and it can pose many problems to your health and to your lungs, but at the same time, I think the 6 vape deaths that have occurred have been massively...
And hundreds of hospitalizations. Hundreds.
I wouldn't...
And across many products, it's not just one bad batch. It's across different products.
There have been several products where the deaths occurred, all of which were actually counterfeit THC pods. These were not actual vape pods made by big companies like Juul. Concept of making cotton candy flavored tobacco, it's just like really predatory.
That's like Joe Camel. You might not remember him, but they had this cartoon character for Camel cigarettes. And it was
a little different,
a blatant appeal to children.
Yeah.
All right, well, whatever. Vaping. We want to get to the communism. I think when you're at the skate park, are you seeing people vape? Obviously.
Yeah.
Are you seeing kids your age doing it?
Generally 15, 16.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what blowing cotton means?
I'm not sure. No.
I read that. That's when you see some guy vaping, standing on the corner. He's blowing out this massive smoke.
Yeah, with the entire.
I mean,
like,
you can
100%.
You can jack up the heating element so that you're getting this massive hit, and that can't be good.
That's definitely harmful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would refrain from doing that.
Yeah, of course.
And the first time I tried tobacco, I was basically addicted, and that was snuff. Do you know what snuff is?
It's chewing tobacco?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
finely cut chewing tobacco, different brands, and Skoal, Copenhagen, and you put a pinch between your cheek and gum, and you're getting a massive rush of nicotine. So in high school, we would do that and sit and spit into cups in the back of the class. It's just very gross. And then I smoked cigarettes. I never smoked that much, but I did for many years, and then I just quit. So that's one thing. I mean, that cigarettes and heroin. If you can go through life without ever trying that even once, you're going to be in good shape.
I got it. Yeah. I don't think that trying vapes once or twice is generally harmful, but I do absolutely despise the culture around it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think that most kids who vape are douchebags. So that's why I try to avoid it, I guess.
That should be a public service announcement. Most kids who vape are douchebags. Do not vape.
Better than anything anti-drug stuff that the government has ever put out.
Would Stalin have vaped?
Probably. I do know he was likely very big on tobacco.
Did he smoke? Or...
Yeah, he smoked out of a wood pipe.
Oh, like a rustic corncob pipe or a fancy... Huh. All right, so let's get to Stalin. How did you get infected with this communist ideology? Is it through Instagram? Are there predatory psychos seeking you out to try to turn you communist? Like creepy?
No, it's pretty self-motivated. Like,
okay.
I've gone from liberalism to democratic socialism to Marxism.
Okay. Do you know what neoliberal capitalism is? Because people are becoming aware of that. So what do you think that is?
That's just generally the ideology of unregulated capitalism.
Yeah. So capitalism, how is that working out these days?
It's working out terribly. I have some statistics that I can actually...
Statistics, okay.
Yeah, so...
He's looking at memes on Instagram, by the way, which is great. So,
in the capitalist world, around 8 million people die every year because they lack clean water. And this can be... statistics can be derived from many third world countries as well as places like Flint, Michigan, in the richest country in the world, America.
That's true. So are you saying that Western capitalism underdevelops the global South and exploits these countries
of course.
To the point where instead of solving these problems, they're exacerbating
American
them?
and European imperialism, which is a product of capitalism, has created just massive amounts of death and famine in Africa, South America. Yeah.
When they criticize socialism gone wrong, like when socialism turns into a dictatorship kind of thing, they always talk about, the deaths of millions, but capitalism does the same thing. Our system is denying people health care, and people in this country, do not go to the doctor because they know they can't afford it and they don't have insurance. So, let's talk about Stalin, because I don't think he's the best example of a socialist leader. How many millions of people did he brutally kill?
There's a lot of misconceptions about how many people he killed.
Millions?
No, actually not. So
there was a famine in Ukraine that he's responsible for that killed millions there.
So before I jump in to point out the historical fallacies in Stalin's death count,
okay,
I'm going to just make a quick disclaimer here. So when liberals and capitalists use the argument of such and such communist, socialist, Marxist government killed X amount of people, a common reply generally is to run the defense of said government. And this isn't inherently wrong, as I will be doing this, but it implicitly concedes to the capitalist that a death count of a specific government plays the role in the legitimacy of a system or idea, which is obviously wrong. So, as I'll be pointing out several historical inaccuracies in Stalin's death count, which is not wrong to do, it's a very trivial argument to make because I'm going to be conceding to your own ideological view on morality and not that of a Marxist. So, Marx recognized morality to be a product of class antagonisms existing in society, along with society's material conditions. So, generally, morality and civility are bourgeois fabrications to maintain class dominance. When people like you make the critique of Stalin or Mao that their methods were not moral or civil because they killed, when you criticize the morality of their methods, you're disregarding hundreds of years of class oppression that could hardly be considered moral or civil. So when Mao kills 4,000 landlords in the Cultural Revolution, he's killing people who have been oppressing the lower class for hundreds of years.
But is there a way to do that without the killing?
No, there's
No.
not.
So in a revolution, everyone dies, right?
So in 1932 to 1933, a few famines killed about 4 to 6 million people, according to archival data provided by Stephen G. Wheatcroft, which does allow for some margin of error, so it could have been less than 4 to 6 million people.
I don't know who Stephen G. Wheatcroft is, but you're 13, so you should know that.
I'd also like to point out the research of Mark B. Talger, professor of agricultural history and Russian Soviet history at West Virginia University, who actually points out that there were significant natural factors that led to the famine, intentional or genocidal, like...
Okay, do you know what a gulag is?
Yes, so regarding the gulags, it's also worth noting that the gulags were highly unexceptional for their time, and as conditions in the USSR improved as a result of industrialization and economic, social, and cultural development, the gulag mortality fell significantly. Post-war gulag mortality averaged at 0.725% compared to 0.56% in modern Russian prisons. Now, that's not to deny the gulags or downplay them, but if we use the same logic to mention American prisons, we would consider the U.S. government responsible for the approximately 100,000 deaths in the penal system over the last 25 years.
That's not accurate.
Yeah, that's
we have the
accurate.
death penalty, but we're talking in the hundreds, the people that have been executed in the U.S.
No, but
dying of natural causes in prison is...
Yeah, I know.
That's...
And I am talking about death from natural causes.
This is almost like gulag denialism.
Gulag denialism.
You're defending a mass murderer who killed millions of people.
Are you comparing this to, may I ask if you are actually comparing this to Nazi Germany? Because that would be fairly inappropriate. Like, this was
Stalin
nothing
had
compared
people
to
murdered
Nazi
and
Germany.
put them in camps. Hitler had death camps. That was probably worse. A gulag is basically a concentration camp.
A gulag is a prison for political...
Right.
Yeah,
So that's bad. You
No,
don't put your
not
political
necessarily.
enemies in prison and kill them.
Well, you also don't put thousands of minorities in prison and work them to death.
Yeah. So that's kind of the apples and oranges or the false dichotomy things. Like,
That's
well, at least he wasn't Hitler.
That's not a false dichotomy.
Okay. At
No,
least he
that's a
wasn't
good-
Stalin. At least he wasn't Hitler.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
anyway,
Of all the killings and stuff, did he do anything good?
yeah, he did. Oh my gosh. He did
Okay.
massive amount. Yeah, okay, so first of all, he helped India massively. So soon after Indian independence in 1947, the country was faced with an alarming shortage of food grain. So
That's actually a great capitalist story because England hoarded the food
Yep.
during World War II and after.
So the Indian government urgently requested both USA and the USSR to send in food aid, right? The American officials were working on the modalities for food grain aid, working out its terms and conditions and stuff. When the Indian request reached Kremlin in the USSR, Stalin immediately ordered a food grain-laden ship that was already on its way to a different destination to change course and go to India. A top Kremlin
That's
official...
just one ship.
No, this is pretty massive. This saved a lot of people. A Kremlin official intervened, saying that documents are yet to be completed and signed, to which Stalin said, "Documents can wait, hunger cannot." This is from an Indian diplomat. He massively helped India. He also, I don't have notes on this, and I didn't have enough time to do a massive amount of research on this, but I believe, personally, that Nazi Germany wouldn't have been fully suppressed without him. Like,
well, Hitler's tragic error was invading the Soviet Union. That was it.
Yeah,
That
a
was
massively overlooked part of World War II, and closing in on Nazi Germany was the fight on the Eastern Front.
Yeah, where millions of Russians died. Millions fighting the
Nazis. But Russia killed millions of Nazis.
Yeah.
Under Stalin. And, the Nazis, without Soviet Russia's help, the Nazis wouldn't have been fully suppressed. And, so Stalin is responsible for Hitler's death in a massive amount of ways.
Okay.
Yeah, because as much as he hated the bourgeoisie, he also hated fascists. So he killed fascists alike with his other political prisoners.
And fascists hate communists.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, be careful on the internet, because, there's some neo-fascism happening here, and it could get worse. Hopefully not.
It's already pretty bad, definitely.
All right, so he sent one tiny ship full of grain to India.
No, it was...
And what happened after World War II? I mean, the purges and the killings and the death camps, the gulags. So, let's wrap it up on Stalin, Max. Can you give us... Let's each do like a one-sentence review of Stalin. I'll go first. Mass murderer, killer of millions, douchebag. Oh, fuck! Stupid dogs. So we're back. We do have to pause the podcasting when our 3 dogs see something outside, like a squirrel or a mailman. So I summed up how I felt about Stalin. Can you tell me, like, in a sentence or two?
I think he was, he did great things for the revolution and, other things likewise. I'm very quick to critique Stalin when I'm arguing with a fellow leftist who is more authoritarian than me, such as a tanky or people who believe completely in the economic policy of the Soviet Union.
Okay, a tanky is someone that thinks Stalin is this glorious hero who never did anything wrong? Or?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
They're like alt-authoritarian communist, I guess.
Okay. So you're online with these people. Do you feel you don't know who they are? Do you feel like it's literally a Russian troll trying to, like, hurt American kids?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe that at all.
Do you have any of your friends that you talk to? Do you actually know who are down with this? Or?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. Well, Stalin, American hero. That's it.
Yep.
Saved the world.
Yes, that's exactly what I said.
All right. Well, this has been great. First podcast, I talked about the National Enquirer and the history behind that. At one point, the owner's father, he had an Italian language newspaper in New York called Il Progresso, very influential, and which did tons to promote Mussolini. They were buddies. He went over to Italy and Mussolini gave him a medal. So, fascism is all around. And speaking of fascism, let's just wrap up with a crazy take. So what I'll do, I'm going to throw out we'll test the knowledge of a 13-year-old about American politics.
Okay.
Okay, do you know who Elizabeth Warren is?
Yes, she is a Democratic presidential candidate for 2020 elections.
Do you see that she has any flaws?
Yes, she does. She's pretty much adopted the majority of Bernie Sanders' policies.
Yeah.
And added a few more neoliberal spins to it, and it's pretty much just
she's glommed onto the Bernie thing.
Yeah.
But the reason I don't trust her is she was a Republican.
Yeah, she was.
I was never a Republican. I always hated Republicans. She voted for Ronald Reagan, and then I think it's great if people can change their ideology and change their beliefs. So that's great that she is now this pseudo-progressive, but I don't see how you trust that. What the fuck? Okay, Max, so we are going to wrap it up, assuming that this first episode of our podcast reaches millions of people all over the world. What do you want to say?
I want everybody to unionize your workplace, spread class consciousness, revolt against your oppressors, and all cops are bad.
Okay, those are big general ideas. All cops are bad. That's a sweeping statement. We could get into my dislike of cops, but we'll save that for another time. All right, Max, thank you for joining us.
All right.
And we're going to go to another commercial break.
It's the water that makes it good. It's the water, it's understood. You'll enjoy Olympia, sparkling, cool, and clear. You'll enjoy Olympia, it's the most refreshing beer.
One of the few places in all the world where nature provides perfect brewing water is Olympia, Washington, where the Olympia Brewing Company is located. This remarkable water, flowing cold and clear from artesian wells, has the precise character necessary to bring out the elusive flavors of the choice hops and grains. Yes, it's the water that's responsible for the consistent, light, sparkling flavor you enjoy in Olympia beer.
You'll enjoy Olympia, sparkling, cool, and clear. For refreshing satisfaction, always say Olympia beer.
Visitors are always welcome at the Olympia Brewing Company, Olympia, Washington.
So we have one obituary for this episode and a couple other bits, and then we've really got to wrap it up. This is our first episode, and it took a lot of extra time to try to learn GarageBand and figure out how to use our inexpensive microphone to get some decent audio. But I got to apologize if the audio quality is not pristine here. That is going to happen eventually. So we're not going to do mailbag this episode, no review of condiments, no marijuana. But I think our formula will fall into place soon enough. We kind of have it down already, a biography, an interview, a mishmash of shit to close out the show. I do want to mention that we do a legal check on all material, and any music, effects, or interviews you hear are either in the public domain or protected under the concept of fair use. Okay, so we're going to record several podcasts, and nothing is going to be released until January 1st, 2020. But this is being recorded in October 2019, and we just heard that Tiger Oak Publications filed for bankruptcy. They publish city magazines, those glossy city monthlies all over the country, including Seattle Magazine and Seattle Business Magazine. The freelance writers who are owed money will get screwed, of course. That's how it works. But I wanted to do a quick frame grabber, as we call it, where we review some media. This is 425, the East Sides magazine. So that is like the glossy city monthly for Bellevue. And we got the October issue. The cover, of course, is The Ultimate Cocktail Guide. And then we flip it open and there's this hipster making a funny face drinking some wine that looks like water with a drop of food coloring in it. It's very light. Visit the Tri-Cities, Washington. The headline, Be More Cool. And then facing that is the ugliest marijuana ad I've ever seen in my life. Always blunt. Always greener. I guess Always Greener is the name of a Redmond pot shop. The art is this hideous high school art class drawing of this ugly purple guy who has actual testicles for a chin. So the economics of publishing these magazines, they don't make sense in the internet era. I mean, it's got to cost $100,000 to print this and then mail it out. That's why they need advertising from the Tulalip Resort Casino. Savor the excitement of culinary artistry. And there's a picture of a guy that looks like Russell Wilson sandwiched between two hotties. And they are having fun savoring some artistry. Here's an article, Quintessential Stockholm. Now, you are never going to hear me use that word on this podcast. This is not an 80s fern bar. This is a serious podcast. City magazines love to use that word, though. Lux Living. Here's a section about, what would it be like if you just imagine what you would be doing, eating, or buying if money were no object. We scoured this area and the world for some of the coolest, most exclusive, and some outrageously expensive experiences to make up our Lux Living story. The most expensive food and drink money can buy. Cocktails, whiskey, port wine, caviar. Save the world in style. High-end finds for your home can be both gorgeous and good for the earth. All right, so anyway, you get the idea why this magazine should not exist. Here's a recipe for roasted fig, pink peppercorn, thyme soda. And the fig in the photograph, a beautifully done, food-styled photograph, is not roasted. If it was roasted, it would be all lumpy and mushy. So, what kind of cocktail are you? Let's see, am I the grandpa or the trendsetter? Oh no, I am the hipster. You'll love this take on a classic 80s cocktail. The flannel shirt cocktail. It has notes of apple cider and allspice finished with smooth blended scotch. You won't be able to contain yourself from telling people how cool you are. We started this episode with the story of Italian immigrants who started the National Enquirer, and we will end our episode with an obituary for another Italian immigrant, Mama Enza. This was written by a friend of the podcast and Enza's friend, Ronald. Enza Sorrentino, 1943 to 2019. Enza Sorrentino, a traditional Sicilian chef whose deft touch with Italian pasta seduced a generation of Seattle diners away from canned spaghetti and meatballs and bogus fettuccine alfredo, passed away yesterday after a brief illness. She was 76 years old and had been fighting both cancer and heart failure. A funeral mass will be celebrated at Our Lady of Fatima in Magnolia on Friday, October 11th at 10 a.m. Mama Enza, as she was sometimes known, was the matriarch of an extended restaurant family. She arrived in Seattle from her native Sicily in 2003 to help her oldest son, Carino Bonrada, and his business partner, Giuseppe Forte, run their popular sidewalk cafe in Belltown, La Vida Bella. And coincidentally, just in time for the birth of her first grandson, Marco. After leaving La Vida Bella, Enza and another son, Fabio, opened Trattoria Sorrentino, a pizzeria on Queen Anne, later called Cucina Enza. For the past several years, she has been the executive chef at Mondello in Magnolia, a low-profile, 10-table, 30-seat neighborhood gem of a restaurant with a limited menu of classic Italian dishes such as lasagna bolognese, fettuccine with a homemade sausage ragu, seafood couscous, linguine with clams, and homemade tiramisu. My mom was the soul of this restaurant, her son Carino said. A daughter, Sofana, manages Mondello. In addition to her children and 5 grandchildren in Seattle, she is also survived by a brother, Michele Napoli, in Florence, Italy, by a son, Alessandro Sorrentino, in Palermo, and by a daughter, Giada Sorrentino, and her 2 sons in Palermo. Her son Carino has also operated Divino Wine Bar in Ballard and Pizzeria 88 in Capitol Hill, and most recently in Magnolia opened a Peruvian restaurant called Pink Salt. Enza Sorrentino was born in the lean post-Mussolini years in Marsala, a small town on the west coast of Sicily. Her father was a teacher, her mother an office worker, but her grandfather had owned a restaurant. Enza grew up in the impoverished landscape of post-war Italy and jumped at the chance to escape. She married and moved to the French-speaking Moroccan capital of Casablanca for a decade. Returning to Sicily, she took a job as a bookkeeper for the region's biggest union, the CGL. Thanks to her language skills, she assumed a prominent role in the union's international relations. But it was a political position, hence quite perilous. As the legend goes, after witnessing more than one mafia hit, she walked away. Still, with 5 children to look after, she needed work. So she took a job as a dishwasher in a restaurant. Here is where it gets interesting. One day, the cook didn't show up, and Enza stepped in to prepare the restaurant's lasagna. Who made this? The dumbfounded customers asked. So Enza was promoted. Not that she wasn't already an accomplished home cook. For years, she'd been feeding her own family of 5 and their friends. But this was different. Now she had to cook for dozens of customers every night. Now, it seems to me that there are only a few jobs that require everyday 24-hour attention. Not digging ditches, you knock off at sundown. One is a single mom raising a family of 5. The other is running a restaurant. But Enza was anything if not resilient, and anything but lazy. She made pasta by hand. She once cut up an entire lamb with a blunt dinner knife. She was the least fussy of cooks, but demanding for all that. In Palermo, she ran a popular nightclub, standing up to regular shakedowns from both underworld dons and agents of the law. In Seattle, no such problems, so she never returned to Palermo except for brief family visits. She would turn up at the restaurant at 6 a.m. to bake 24 loaves of bread. She would roll 200 meatballs by hand before lunchtime. She made her own sausage, her own pasta, her own pizza dough, her own sauces. Whenever she was physically able, she turned up at the Saturday market in Magnolia to sell her wares. She knew everybody. Howard Schultz of Starbucks was an early customer in Belltown. Martin Selig and Gordon Bowker were among her fans. Italian opera stars arrived at her restaurants in Queen Anne and Magnolia. Jeff Bezos made a reservation. There's a great picture of Jeff with Enza. Enza loved to go out. She particularly loved going to the opera to hear the great Italian composers. She had a love-hate relationship with restaurants. She would complain about high prices, tasteless entrees, and indifferent service. But when she found a place she liked, she was loyal to a fault. The chicken liver mousse at Le Pichet, the fish and chips at Steelhead Diner, the tuna sushi at Shiro's in Belltown and Sam's in Ballard. Shiro, we should mention, was a longtime friend and a next-door tenant at La Vita Bella. Over time, her 5 children provided her with 7 grandchildren, who could, of course, do no wrong, and on whose behalf she would spare no expense. Her own shopping was limited to the bargain counter at Macy's, Ross dressed for less, and her favorite, the Goodwill. Still, like all Italians, she knew the value of the prestigious brands, Gucci, Prada, Rolex, Dior, Chanel. She will be remembered by a generation of diners spread across Seattle, granted many in Magnolia, who admired her lasagna, worshipped her gnocchi and ravioli, relished her linguine with clams. She was always touched by expressions of support, but she didn't tolerate fools. Many a vendor escaped her wrath only because, even after almost 2 decades in Seattle, she had failed to master the English language intricacies of an Italian insult. As it happened, some of the cooks at Mondello neither read nor speak English, so Enza would look over the tickets in English and call out the orders in rapid-fire Italian. The Spanish-speaking cooks always knew just what to do. Her own English remained halting. She was not, like some of Seattle's Italian restaurateurs, a front-of-the-house person. Though she was grateful for their compliments, she did not seek the attention of her customers by spending a lot of time in the dining room. Her place, she knew, was in the kitchen. As she absorbed the details of her weakened heart and her inexplicable myelioma, she often said that she didn't fear death. She was proud of her family's accomplishments and grateful that she was still able to see her Sicilian grandchildren one last time before she passed away. What we remember most about Enza Sorrentino is the unconditional love she had for all her friends. There were other Italian mamas in Seattle, but only one Mama Enza from Sicily. The world was a better place with Enza in it, certainly better fed, and it is a lesser place without her. Her early life was not easy, not that anybody's life in Italy in the devastation that followed World War II was easy. 5 children by the time she was 30. Her first job was as a bookkeeper for a prominent left-wing union in Sicily. Enza became a staunch socialist in the best sense, passionate supporter of workers' rights, of women's rights, of human rights. Although she was by nature quite shy, she was no one's fool. She fiercely guarded her children and resisted anyone who would cross her, but always with a great sense of style. She owned a white chef's coat, but rarely wore it. It was the restaurant business that grounded her and gave her a calling. A guest, she would often point out, a guest is a sacred trust. And to serve that trust, she used her astonishing gifts as a cook. She was not a prima donna. She thought most TV chefs were little more than trained monkeys. Yet she knew somehow that the food that came out of her kitchen was as good as it could be. Would she have preferred a fancier kitchen with more space, more burners, more line cooks and prep cooks? Perhaps, but the cramped quarters didn't deter her talent. The constraints made her all the more resourceful. She wrote almost nothing down, not because she improvised everything, nor because she was secretive, but because she knew her culinary procedures by heart. She didn't work from recipes, she just knew. How many scoops of flour to dump into the mixer to make bread, how much water, salt, yeast, how long to knead the dough. The same for pasta, the same for sauces. No secrets, just knowledge. The Thermomix was her friend, a fancy home appliance that made splendid bechamel for her lasagna, a simple food processor purchased on Amazon to make her pesto. To the end, she would sit on a stool in the kitchen, building hotel pans of lasagna layer by layer, rolling out gnocchi, a task that took her no time at all, or assembling saltimbocca. Repetitive, even boring work, but attention to detail, because details mattered. Not tweezers, but flavors. Her dignity came from the work itself, from the discipline. She carried the procedures in her head and the techniques in her fingertips. Her instruments were flour, semolina, olive oil, salt, and basil. The notes on her culinary scale. She composed effortlessly, as did Mozart, with a natural sense of rhythm and melody. Okay, Ronald, you're getting the metaphors here. Not to show off, but to nourish. Natural talent. Painters like Michelangelo, composers like Vivaldi, like Verdi, like Rossini, like Bellini. A natural culinary athlete, if you will, like a quarterback who can see the whole field in their mind, who can predict what's going to be where, and who has mastered the ability to throw the ball to a precise spot. Enza loved Seattle. She truly did. But she never forgot where she came from, Sicily, the land that taught her how to cook. Sicily itself is an island that rises from the Mediterranean like a giant pebble kicked by the toe of Italy. It's roughly the size of Vermont or of western Washington. Ringed by deep blue waters, its fishing villages teem with fresh seafood. Inland, the island is covered with dense forest, fertile hillsides, small farms, and ancient vineyards. For centuries, it has been viewed by Greeks, Romans, and Phoenicians as a strategic military outpost. It evolved as a cultural and culinary melting pot of astonishing diversity. Bringing the spirit, flavors, and hospitality of her native Sicily to Seattle, Enza was a culinary ambassador who celebrated Italian food and family. Mondello has long been recognized as one of Seattle's best Italian restaurants. In 2017, it was named one of the top 10 restaurants in Seattle by Seattle Met. Eater has called it a neighborhood gem. Why? Well, first there's the food itself, natural, traditional, and authentic, a richly flavored menu of local ingredients prepared in-house. Even better is the cheerful family ambiance and legendary Sicilian hospitality. At Mondello, you're always a welcome guest. And when Mama said mangia, it was an offer you did not refuse, could not refuse, must not refuse. Enza is watching over us. Eat, she says, mangia. So thank you again, Ronald, friend of the podcast. This Friday, October 11th, 2019, is the service for Mama Enza. The Doomed Planet podcast is part of the Wild World News Network. You can find us at doomedplanet.com, which will bounce to our Twitter page, which is at doomedplanetpod.
5, 6,
Goodbye.
7, 8. goodbye. This is the end of the song.